So here we are. We've got a few textures on some of the panels already, and I think I would like to jump over to working on the shoelaces. And in order to do that, however, I think we do need to do a little bit of cleanup, because if you look real closely, there is some interpenetration of the laces into the parts of the shoe that they shouldn't really be penetrating. Also, if you notice, I'm going to hide this. Notice that there are no holes for the shoelaces to go through here. So with the if you were to look real close through the eye stays, you'll notice that you would see the fabric underneath there, and I really want to kind of eliminate that. But fortunately, the eye stays do cover this part of the shoe, so we can actually bore some holes here and not have to be too clean about it, because again, the eye stay panel here, the eye stay flap, is covering over all of that. So let's go ahead and move forward with that. First thing I'm going to do is just kind of hide everything that I'm not going to be working with here, and it'll be that. We're going to hide those items. I'm going to hide the tongue for now. We'll have to work with that a little bit later. And I'm going to hide these guys like that and that. Yeah, select all of those, and also this guy right here. Yeah, I think that's most of them. I'm going to switch back to default mode. It's just a little more responsive for me. There we go. So I've hidden all the items that I'm not going to be directly working with, just to reduce the screen clutter and make things a little bit simpler for me. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be deleting polygons, and I'm going to be beveling vertices in this process to make holes in the main shell so that we don't actually see that fabric material when we look through the holes of the eye stays. But don't worry about the hidden items. We can always unhide an item selectively if we need to spot check our work as we go along. So I'm just going to start off by deleting a polygon in the front here under that lace. And you'll notice that we can see through that all the way to the other side of the shoe, because Modo only presents us with one-sided polygons. And that'll make our job a little bit easier, in that we don't have to worry about the inside part of the main hull. And the next thing I'm going to do is go over here and grab a vertice and hit the B key for bevel. And I'm going to grab that blue handle and click and drag the mouse until that spawns a new polygon from that vertice. And then I'm just going to go over to polygon, select that polygon, and hit the delete key. Now I'm just going to move up the line a little bit and select the next area that needs fixing, which is right there. And I'll just select that vertice, hit the B key for bevel, and just expand that out. And I might need to just adjust its position a little bit. I'll just use the move tool and just move it over to where that string penetrates and hit the delete key, and there we go. Now the hole, because of the subdivision surfaces, shrinks down a little bit, so you can just scale it up a little bit if you need to. Now while I'm at it, I'll just move up to the previous hole that I created and just move that and get that in place. Next one is this area up here. Now this is a little tricky because it is actually hidden by the saddle. However, I don't think the saddle is going to completely cover that hole, so let me turn this saddle back on here. And yeah, you can see that there is a gap at the top there, so we'll have to do an extra edge there and bridge that as we go. So I'll just fast forward through the rest of these so you can see how I'm handling the rest of the eyelets on the model. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we do need to create another edge loop around the top of the main shell here so that we can have an edge we can bridge across there to cover that gap. So as you can see, a loop went all the way around to the other side, which is exactly what we want. And now I'm going to go ahead and use the edge selection mode, select two edges, select the bridge tool, and hit the K key to bring up the tool properties. And we want to go down to where it says auto connection. We want to make sure that this is unchecked. All right, so it goes straight across right there. All right, So now we have a hole for that shoelace, and the top part is sealed off so we don't see that when the saddle is on. Do the same to this side, and yeah, so that looks pretty good. Now let's check it with the saddle. That looks pretty good, but I may still have to make some minor adjustments. So I'm just going to fast forward through this as I make some minor adjustments to the various panels and elements on the shoe, utilizing the element move and the element push tool predominantly. Okay, so I've isolated the shoelaces here so that we can go ahead and add a texture to it, but we need a couple of things. We need to have a material or item mask made for this, and we also need to have a UV map, none of which have been made just yet. So I'm going to open a UV panel, and I'm going to make sure my UV toolbox is available to me there. All right. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to select an edge on this item here, and double click that, and that selects an edge all the way along that lace. So now we're going to use a different tool. This time, instead of the UV unwrap, we're going to use the UV peeler tool, which is right there, and I'm just going to click on that. And I'm going to click in the UV viewport, and as if by magic, it peeled that lace into a flat UV map. Now the next thing we want to do is create a perfect rectangle out of this UV map by clicking on the, you guessed it, rectangle tool. Now, instead of creating a material mask or item mask for this object, we're going to let Modo do the work for us, and we're just going to drag and drop an image onto the top of this shoelace. So let's open up our clip browser, and add a clip and navigate over to the Weave directory that should be in your images folder. And I'm just going to select all of these guys, hit open, because I'm not sure which one I'm going to want to use yet. So, all right. Now you'll see that we have the same pattern, but it's used for different effects on this shoestring. So I'm just going to grab the bottom one, and you see that it applies it to the full shoelace right there. And what we need to do is we need to change the number of times that wraps around that UV map. And that's pretty easy. We go down to the texture locator edge tab there. I'll just bring that up and go down to where the horizontal vertical wraps are. I'm going to click on the gang tool or the gang icon right there. And I'm going to type in 250, and there you go. We have that weave now perfectly placed on our lace. Now I'm going to change the effect here by clicking on that and typing in bump. And now instead of affecting the diffuse color of our lace, it's going to be applied as a bump map. Now we have something here called a normal map, which is kind of like a bump map on steroids. So I'm going to drag that into there, and I'm going to set the wrap to the same number, 250 on both of those. And there we go. That should be a perfect match. Now again, set a diffuse color. We're going to change that to normal. And immediately we get a little message here that's telling us that the normal map is being color corrected. And normally, no pun intended, you don't want the normal map color corrected. So I'm just going to select yes. And there we go. Now we have a bump map and a normal map applied to our materials. Now typically you don't really need both, but I wanted to show you how to get a texture of a weave onto the shoelace. And that shows up nicely in our render. At last, we've reached the end of the footwear build lessons using Modo's retopology method. And I've always believed that the best way to learn is to strike out on your own. And by this point, you should have enough information and resources to complete the texturing of the shoe and make it truly your own design. I know it's been a bit of a climb, but I promise you, with practice, this process will become second nature and your focus will be on the creativity and not the tools.